Hi, welcome to this video recording of the Codelab that tells you or explains to you how to deploy a secure MCP server on Cloud Run. So Model Context Protocol, as most of you might be knowing, is a standardized way in which the LLMs can get access to external tools and services. So it's a great way for you to ground the responses that you receive in your own, backend APIs or your own way of actually, giving back the data to the model. The thing we are going to be doing is that we're just not going to be building out the MCP server, but we will also be deploying it on Cloud Run and in a secure way. So we'll see those steps also. And towards the end, we are going to be also seeing that once we deploy this MCP server, how do we access it? So we are going to be using Gemini CLI, and we'll be configuring the MCP server in the settings.json of Gemini CLI and then actually communicating to it, right? So we'll see all of these step by step. So what we're going to be building out as far as the MCP server is concerned is a sample zoo MCP server that actually has two tools. And as you know, if I step back a bit, MCP has got tools, it's got So as you know, MCP has got tools, it's got resources, and it's got prompts. So we'll be building out tools as well as prompts in this Codelab. And what we'll be doing is that first we'll be building out a couple of tools. And these tools, as you see, get animals by species and get animal details. So get animals by species, for example, if you see where are the lions, it'll probably give you detail on where the lions are within that exhibit and so on, versus if you actually ask for an animal by its first name, then it should ideally go and get the tool, get animal details to invoke. All right, so let's get going. Just to summarize again, we'll be building out the MCP server and deploying it on Cloud Run. And of course, we'll be doing it in a secure fashion, and we'll see how to connect it from Gemini CLI. So let's move on. The next thing is about a project setup. So all of this stuff we will be doing on Google Cloud Shell, but then we are going to be also deploying this on Google Cloud Run, which is Google Cloud Service, which means that you will need to also have a Google Cloud project. So here are a few steps, which if you want, you can do that, though you may not need to do it in case you've already got a personal Google Cloud or a Google Cloud account. And then if you've got that, if you've got an existing project, know how to make your way to the Cloud Console, you obviously know, your way around it. So that should be all set. But for those of you who do not know that, what I've done is I've actually redeemed a $5 credit, which typically you get for doing these labs. And I'm going to now go ahead and actually create a Google Cloud project, make sure that billing is enabled, and then we can go on to the third step. So I'm just going to switch over to my console over here in Google Cloud. And over here, I can create a project by going over here and doing a new project here. So I'll click on this. It brings up a new project form. Over here, I'll just say, let's say my zoo MCP server. So as you can see, I've given the name, but the important thing to note is the project ID. So I'll just go ahead and create this. So it's creating the project. I'll just select that too. So this brings it up, in this drop down over here. And if I just click that, just for information, this is the project name, but the project ID is over here. Now, just to make sure that billing and everything is set up, I'm just going to check a few things. So bear with me. So I've got this project ID. The project has been selected. I'm going to go to billing, and in billing, I've already redeemed the $5 on-ramp credit, which I have. So under this billing account, I'm just going to make sure that, I just see some of my credits. Yeah, those things are there. And in the overview, I can just maybe take a look at this project and see which projects are linked to it. So it's linked my project correctly over here, that under this billing account, I've got this new project that's set up. However, if it's not set up, it will tell you that it needs a billing account or it has got no linked billing account, in which case you can attach it to your linked account. So now that everything is set up from a Google Cloud perspective, we'll move on to the third step, which is to look at the environment Cloud Shell in which we will be developing our stuff. So the third step says that you can launch the Google Cloud Shell editor. That goes into a separate URL, the id.cloud.google.com. But I'll just show you how you can do it from within the Google Cloud Console itself, and then we'll go on for the rest of the things. So I'm going to go to my Google Cloud Console. I'm going to click on this Activate Cloud Shell button. That spins up the Cloud Shell VM. If you're doing this for the first time or after a long time, it takes a while for it to get things up and ready. So just bear with that. Once everything is fine, you should be able to see a terminal of this sort. So I'm actually now into the Cloud Shell terminal, and you can see that it's also selected my project ID. At any point in time, just make sure that you are in the right project ID, and that's very important. There are also other commands that we'll come to in a while. Just for information, Gemini CLI is now available in the Cloud Shell terminal itself. So that's a big thing, because that just makes it easy for us to start using the CLI within Cloud Shell itself, and we'll see that towards the end. I'll just dismiss this, and if I look at the steps now, it says that you can navigate to the Cloud Shell editor. Now the easiest way to do that, over here I'm in the terminal, and I can keep toggling between the terminal and the editor. If I need to go to the editor, there's the Open Editor button here that I can click. So that connects me to the Cloud Shell editor, and I should see something that's as familiar to most of you folks who might have used VS Code, for example. So it's a similar setup out here. Now, few things that we need to check up over here as per the instructions. One is to make sure that, from a terminal perspective, since we might be using the integrated terminal itself over here, let Code Assist come up if it wants to, that's fine. If you want, you can just dismiss that too. Now, this integrated terminal is where we might be checking a few things to make sure that the correct project has been set up or not, and so on. So what we are going to be doing is just following those instructions here. So it says click on this new terminal. Once your terminal is out there, we need to make sure that we have set the correct project for our gcloud CLI. So we'll be using this command, and obviously for the project ID, we have to use the project ID that we just created. So I'm just going to put this command here, which is to set the project. And project ID, if you are confused, at times where to get it from, like for example, you will you can also, if you see the Codelab, it says if you can't remember your project ID, you can also list your project IDs with this. This is a pretty good, a helpful thing. So let me just do that. Though there are ways to even navigate within the console and get the stuff, as you know, but let's learn another command here to get the projects that are there for me. So over here, this should ideally be listing all my project IDs, and I not suddenly, but I remember that, okay, it's probably this one. So I'm just going to take this, the project ID, and then the previous command, which was the gcloud config and set project and the project ID. So this is similar to this one that's going on over here. I'm just going to take that, and even the project ID is kind of visible over here, but that's fine. Just to confirm a few things. So we said that, and if you want to even see some of the settings that are already in place, you can do a gcloud config list, and this should also bring up some of the properties that are already set. So you can see project has been set to that particular a project ID over here. Let's see what more we need to do. So if everything looks good, in case we were prompted, it's fine, but it's updated our property. So we are looking good right now, and we've set the project correctly. So the next step is, look, we're going to be developing the MCP server. We are going to be deploying this to Google Cloud. And as you know, if you want to use certain services in Google Cloud, either directly or sometimes when it gets used behind the scenes, you have to enable those services. And these services are, the ones which you see over here. So the first one is Google Cloud Run, which we'll be using to deploy MCP server. So we're going to be enabling that for our project. The other two are, for example, Google Cloud Run runs, containerized workloads. So when you actually go ahead and deploy your service on Google Cloud, your code gets bundled into a container and it gets written to an artifact registry. So we're just going to be enabling that service too. And behind the scenes, at times when it needs to actually build out the container, it uses Cloud Build service. So even that service is enabled. At times, there could be a query like, do we know which ones to enable or not? Pretty much over time, you would know which ones to enable. If not, the services would be highlighted as you need to enable them first before running a certain command. So over time, you'll kind of discover these also. So let me just copy these three services which need to be enabled. I'm going to be in this terminal right here and just put those. So remember, right, you have to make sure that the previous command, which was gcloud config set project, which sets the project ID, that's important because subsequent commands get run into that project. So this at times could take, close to a minute maybe, in case there are too many services. But in this case, we should be done much under that. So let's see. So right now, we're going ahead and enabling these services. It's got done. So ideally, you should see something that says that an operation with some big ID has finished successfully. And that's exactly what this lab says. So we're looking good right now from setting up the project, enabling the services. We were in Cloud Shell, we are in the editor, the integrated terminal, everything looks good. So sorry, I clicked one more time. So we are now onto the step of coding out our MCP server. Now we're going to be using Python over here. And in terms of the Python environment, packages, and just working with those things to set up, run the servers, etc., we'll be using the UV package manager. Now, the good thing is that just like I showed you earlier, the Gemini CLI is now pre-packaged and comes pre-installed, that is with Google Cloud Shell. The UV package manager is also pre-installed. So that just removes a lot of friction if you want to use these best-in-class tools on Google Cloud Shell. So what do these steps tell us? These steps tell us, let's make a directory, and then navigate into it. This looks straightforward. So I'm going to go there. Okay. Just keep authorizing it. Anytime anything of this thing, this sort pops up, just make sure you do the needful. So here we go. I'm just seeing where I am. I'm currently in my home directory out here, and I'm going to create this directory as the instructions say, as well as navigate into it, right? And since I'm in the integrated terminal, it's nice because I can actually even view this. But in case you don't see this folder out here, please keep in mind this is standard stuff. You can always open your specific folders and make it appear there. What's the next step? Now that we've created our own little space for creating the server, we're going to be running the UV init command, which basically sets up what's the Python version that we need to use, and also it creates a project toml file that has a few metadata in terms of name, what kind of Python version it requires, and of course the dependencies which you see down, which we'll be adding of course over time, but they would all have gone over there. So we're going to be copying this command, and in that particular folder we're just going to be initializing this. So it's pretty quick. It says initialize the project. Now let's see what it might have even done over here. So let's just list out the things. So we just have one pyproject.toml file, and if I just open it from here, though the instruction says you can even cat it, that's fine too. But just to make it a bit easier here, I can just open this file, and you can see it's set up the metadata right now as instructed in the lab. So that's the initialization, just preparing a few things for the Python project that we're going to be writing. The next step is actually to create the MCP server. Okay, so what we are going to be doing now is, if you just look at it, the code and all is in place, but few things first. We are going to be using the fast MCP package to do this. So if I just go over there, this is the fast MCP Python package that just makes it much easier for you. As you can see over here, it's just a few lines of code to even have a simplest of MCP servers, which has one single tool to, let's say, add two numbers. And there's a default way you can run it. Obviously, MCP, as you know, has a couple of protocols right now, the standard input output as well as the streamable HTTP. We will see how we bring it up over the streamable HTTP protocol. So given that we are going to be using fast MCP, it says that we need to add this dependency, into this. So we'll just copy this. And this behind the scenes is like your pip install, if I'm correct. So I'm just going to go there. I'm in that folder. I'm going to add this whole stuff and see that thing updated right there, right? So as we added this dependency, it's even put this entry and created a UV log file, which eventually you can use, to sync dependencies. If you're deploying it in another environment, you could even alternately generate requirements.txt files if you want to do it the old way. Now, just clearing this and closing this file. What's next? So we've done this, and it said it would add a UV log file to your project, which it did. Now we're going to be just coding out our server.py. Now, a neat command, is shown over here, but it's completely up to you how you want to do it. But let's try this. So if you want, you could just stay over here and just do a new file and server.py. But we are in that folder, and if you do a Cloud Shell edit from anywhere, it's pretty neat. It will just open up the server.py, and now it's telling you go ahead, put the code for this particular file. We're just going to be using right now, where I'm just going to copy this whole thing, and I'll just explain to you quickly what's going on there. So the whole file and the code is complete, and it's time to deploy, but we'll just hold on that. So I'm just going to put this file that's out here. Now, let's see what's going on here. So as we mentioned earlier, we're going to be creating a zoo MCP server that lets you query on, where the animals are, or even query on specific animals by first name. So this line is a critical line, and this creates the MCP object, and then we've got actually the data. Now, in real world, this could be coming from any other system, but for now, it's a list which has a list of animal objects, where each one is a species. Each species there's a specific name. So among lions, you've got Leo, Nala, Simba, King, and so on. Then some penguins, and then obviously where they are, and so on and so forth, along with their age also. So this is data. But the interesting thing to notice, we're going to be developing two tools, as I mentioned. So first one is get animals by species. Now, few things are important out here to note. One is this particular decorator that simply marks this as a tool. Secondly, this instruction, or basically the document string that you put out here, is important, because this can be eventually used by the model to also understand what this tool is about, what kind of arguments it takes, so on and so forth, right? And obviously then you've got the code. The code is pretty straightforward. I mean, depending upon the species that you're specifying, it's simply, going into that and returning you that particular collection. And obviously then the next tool is the get animal details. Again, that takes it by its name, You find a clear instruction out here as well as the code. Nothing major happening over here. But just to keep in mind, we've got two tools, right? Both of them defined by this decorator, and then obviously we're starting the server. Now here, earlier I'd shown you this was a quick way of just using it in standard input-output mode. But this code out here, uses the transport as HTTP. It uses the host interface as well as the port. Now, this host and port things is a standard way of doing things, because eventually we want to run this server on Cloud Run, and this is the right way to do that. But you can see here we're going to be eventually running this, exposing that over HTTP, obviously in a secured fashion, and we'll see that a bit later. So having done this, right, the thing you might be asking is, okay, if this is all there is to it, then what's next? Do we deploy it? Do we run this server, locally? You can do all of that too, but for now, the next step simply says we need to go and deploy this MCP server to Cloud Run. Okay. Now, before we get there, I just wanted to show you also a few other things. Now, for example, just take for example that this piece of code that you see over here, right? Let's say you're trying to understand what this code really means. Is it like straightforward or not? Maybe I just need some kind of a refresher, or you might just say, hey, explain to me what this piece of code is doing, right? So for example, let's take this, and if you need some help, right, you can see over here I just selected the thing. I did a right click, and I got a Gemini code assist out here, and I could actually add either the file or the particular selection to the chat context, right? So for example, I may just say, hey, I just focus on this selection, for example. When I click that, you can see that Gemini code assist has come up. It's also given the the line numbers which are in the context, and I can simply go here and say, hey, explain this to me. Now this is sort of kicking off Gemini code assist behind the scenes. It's invoking Gemini, saying explain this piece of code, and in the context I have my specific lines which I wanted to even understand a little bit better. So this is a great way by which you can start using coding assistant right within your Cloud Shell itself. So here you've got several ways by which it's explaining to you what this code means, but you could even use it to generate more code or any of the other things that you might want to do. So again, a little bit of segue, but I'm just going to show you this. Later on, we'll also see we can use Gemini CLI too to do this, but I just showed you code assist. Now, let's go back to where we were. So we've created our server, and the next step is saying we need to deploy this, to Cloud Run. So obviously Cloud Run, as I told you, is a containerized runtime. Or it's a runtime that runs containerized workloads. So that therefore even your server needs to be packaged into a container and eventually deployed onto the Cloud Run runtime. Now, in our case here, we are specifying a Docker file, but there are also other ways by which we could deploy this and use cloud build packs, and Cloud Run will try to figure out which language or framework and what kind of developer stack is being used, and then try to build the image on its own. But in our case here, it's a bit specific, so we are going to be specifying the Docker file. So just like how we created the server.py, I'm just going to be creating this Docker file over here. So I'm here, I'm going to be creating the Docker file too, and let's take the content from the Codelab. I'm going to be putting that here. So what do you see? It's a standard Docker file. It's starting from a base image, and then this is an interesting multi-stage thing that's going on here, where we are actually taking the UVX binaries and putting them into the bin folder. Then we are copying all the content. So in this case, it will be our TOML, it will be our server file, all of these details into the app folder, making that as our current one. And if you see here, we are going to be doing the UV sync. That will install all the dependencies. We want to be running this on a on a specific port number. So we're just exposing one that either we set or one that comes from the environment. And finally, we're just running our server, right? So this is pretty much all that you need to create the Docker file. In case you do not do it for some other kinds of workloads that you want to run on Cloud Run, you can see how it goes in terms of the cloud build packs, but always better to have your own Docker file, which might do a bit of your own, either customized tools or your own optimizations and so on. So here we go. What does it say? So once we've created this file, there is a standard Cloud Run command to deploy. So it's gcloud run deploy. This is basically your Cloud Run service name. The second parameter is important. It says no allow unauthenticated. So we are not going to be just exposing this where anyone can invoke. We're going to be keeping this in a, as an authenticated service or something that requires authentication. What that authentication is, we will be seeing that in a while. Then of course, where we want to deploy this, and this is interesting. This is the source way of deploying it from, for Google Cloud Run. So basically from your current folder is going to take all of the files, zip them, push them up, and then build it out for you. And this is just a way that we are tracking a few things out here. So we can just either use this or you can use any other label that you want. We would recommend that you use this so that we can actually track, of course, in an anonymous fashion, whether the Codelab was successful and you did go ahead and deploy this also. So let's take this command, and I'm going to be putting that in over here. So I'm in the right folder. Let me just clear this. Let me paste this command, and there we go. Okay. So this is going to take at least a minute to 2 minutes. So you'll just have to be patient on that. So obviously it says it's deploying from source, the artifact registry, the service we enabled. It's going to be using that repository to build, store our built containers. And this is going to be created. We'll just have to go ahead and say yes. And while this goes on, this is where you can see the steps actually, and it's quite interesting. So it's first going to be creating that repository which will hold the built container. Once the repository is created, it's going to take all of the sources from your current source directory, zip that up, upload it, and then it's going to be using your Docker file to then build out the container. And once the container is successfully built, it will be pushed to the container repository or the artifact registry repository that has been created. And then it will launch a Cloud Run instance, and it will launch it based on the container image that it just published to the artifact registry, and it will bring that up and then route the traffic over there. So it's a pretty interesting set of steps that go on. If you go to Cloud Build on Cloud Console, you can even see the container building, the Docker commands being run as the container image is being built, and so on. So let's stay here for a while as it builds out the whole thing. Anyways, we'll just come back to this, but the next steps, as you can see, is we've sort of, or let me just summarize a bit. So we've prepared our Python project. We were going to be using the UV package manager. We initialized it using that. We then created, we added the fast MCP dependency because we're going to be using that framework. We have a single server.py file that has got two tools that helps you query for different species of animals in a zoo or even a specific animal by name, right? And then we created our Docker file so that the right container image is built, so that then we can go ahead and deploy this, over Cloud Run. And if everything is fine, it says after a few minutes, which is indeed true, you should see a message that says a server has been, service with name with a particular revision has been deployed and is serving, right? And which would mean that you've deployed your MCP server. Let's see, still going on, so no problem. Let it go on. It should get there. So just be patient a bit. In case you see any specific kind of errors, for example, if you had not enabled certain APIs which would be needed, ideally this one would have popped that up and said you need to enable them. So just keep a watch out if in case you see errors. So here we can see it's completed the work. You can see that the service has now been deployed. It's serving 100% of the traffic. And this is actually the URL. And it's an interesting URL in a sense that it's got your project ID number, the region, and so on, which we'll be using now in the next step, right? So far, so good. And let's see what's our next step. So next step 8 says add the remote MCP server to Gemini CLI. So what we are trying to say here is simple, that look, we've already deployed, right? So we've successfully deployed our remote MCP servers running on Cloud Run right now. And we are going to be using now some LLM, let me put it this, some AI, client, which supports talking to remote MCP servers, so that we can just configure that and then use the tool directly from there. So in our case here, we'll be using the Gemini CLI, and the good news is that in recent weeks, the Cloud Shell has got Gemini coming pre-installed with it, right? So we'll launch that in a while, but for the moment, just keep this particular concept in mind that, hey, we've got a remote MCP server that's hosted, right? This is not an open endpoint. It needs authentication. So what are we going to be using? So we're going to be actually saying that, hey, whatever is the current account that you are using in your, Cloud Shell. In other words, for example, gcloud config list, if I do, and if you do it on your machine, you will see there is a particular account that is being used. So basically you're saying that this user currently, which is logged in this terminal from which we will be also launching Gemini CLI, needs to be able to authenticate itself to the remote MCP server or the Cloud Run service that's running out there. So what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be giving it the permission. So we are in this command, which you see looks complicated, but it's simple enough. What we are saying is that in this particular Google Cloud project, please provide the Cloud Run invoker, because you're going to be invoking the Cloud Run service, or basically the MCP server, which is on Cloud Run. Give it that role, and to whom we are saying give it to that gcloud config. Whatever is the account that's written, which I just showed you in a moment, right? Now, obviously, you will say, where did this come from, right? So this is obviously one of the standard environment variables that gets built. So if you just do $Google Cloud project, you will see that it's got the Zoo MCP server or my project ID already in there. So what I'm going to be doing now is, or in other words, if you're confused what this one is doing, it's the same thing that I did a config list, but this one just says, get me that particular account value. So here's the account value that it's got, right? So fair enough. We can just go here, copy this and complete this. So we're going to be giving our account here the permission to invoke a Cloud Run service. This is still not authentication. It's just that, okay, I've authenticated you, then are you authorized to invoke or no? So this is the authorization part. Okay, I need to be given this permission. Okay, so this should come back quickly. So obviously there could be other permissions, and it shows you all of those things. But then you've also got now the run invoker service that's set up out there. If you've already given permissions of this nature, or if you've got wide ranging permissions, you should be fine in any case. Next step. Now we're just going to be, taking the, what you can say as the authorization token. So if I'm logged in, I already have an authorization token, as you can see over here. So if I just do this, I will see an entire auth token out here. And that's precisely what is being read into this environment variable, plus a project number. So this is again from a G-Cloud projects describe only, right? And we're just breaking out the project number. We need this, though you could have, seen before that, hey, you already got your, URL for the Cloud Run project with an MCP at the end. But this just builds up in a more nicer manner, in a secure manner, because you're not going to be then exposing these things in your Gemini CLI's setting.json. You're setting these environment variables and then doing it. So first step will be to do those things so that we are setting up the project number and we are also exporting the ID token. So I've got two things now that are completely set up. So if I just do an echo of the project number, I would see that, export our ID token, I would see that. And then finally, this is a very interesting, neat way, in the Cloud Shell Bash terminal itself to create this entry in Gemini CLI settings.json. So Gemini CLI from your home folder .gemini, it uses a settings.json file where you can configure all your MCP servers. So in our case here, we've got one MCP server, but if you had more, you would have configured these again and for the other ones. But in our case, we've got this Zoo remote. It's going to be using our Cloud Run URL/MCP, and see this, the authorization is going to be via the particular ID token, right? So I'll just show you then what happens. So if you run this thing, you can always go into the .gemini folder and do it yourself, but it is good. Even I learned this way of doing it. So now if I just do a cat and Gemini and a settings.json, you can see that I've got this entry now in the settings.json file. We've not yet launched Gemini CLI, so just bear with me. But we've also got our environment variable set up. So remember, if you just launch another terminal or something of that sort, you will just have to set these variables again. So don't forget that, right? So once all of this stuff is done, what's next, right? We need to start the Gemini CLI in Cloud Shell. As I told you, it's already pre-installed, so you just have to go ahead and give this command. So we're going to be in VS Code, let's say in the integrated terminal, and that's it. We're going to be launching Gemini. This should come up. And remember, this is going to be not launching, but creating a client connection to the MCP server, because already the settings.json is configured. So you will see, some things that are happening over here. First up, I think the last part of the lab, we need our Gemini CLI to be updated to the newer ones. So it's already doing that. So that's fine for now. But keep in mind that, see, it says I'm using the one MCP server. So if you want to see which MCP server has come up, you can just do a slash that gives you all the commands. If you do /MCP, and it shows you, do you have to do list? So this gives me my configured server. So as you can see over here, it said, hey, you give the MCP list command. I've got one configured MCP server. That's perfect. That was our Zoo remote server. If you remember, it's got two tools right now: get animal detail, get animal details by species. We can actually test this out right now. So let's go back to our things, which is we've started Gemini. Everything looks good. One MCP server has come up. We've done the listing of the tools. That's it. Now we need to ask Gemini to find something in the zoo. In this case, where can I find penguins? Fair enough. So, you can also just do a clear here. Oh, that's good. We've got the update also successfully done. If not, just be patient and let it get done. So I'm going to be just maximizing this a bit. Where can I find penguins? Now, a few things happen here. If you've not used Gemini CLI before, see, it's neatly figured out that to answer this prompt of yours, it's going to need to talk to the Zoo remote MCP server, and this is the tool that it will need to call, right? So this is the MCP server and the tool, and it's asking you for permissions. Are you going to allow it? Always allow, or no, etc., right? So in this case, we can just say yes, go ahead, allow it once. If everything is fine, now it makes a call to the server. It's got some response, and now it will probably format a response in some way and says, hey, you can find these penguins in the particular, the trail and the other path which was there, right? So this is pretty cool. Now, similarly, for example, let's see if it can tell us about Skipper. So we can just say, can you tell me more about the penguin named Skipper? Let's see what happens. Let's give it a try. So this should ideally be opening up another, it's not opening up, but basically identifying first a tool. So as you can see here, the first one said, I need to get the get animals by species tool. But in this case, it knows it's a specific animal by name that we are calling. Hence, it's saying, I think I can just use get animal details tool. Yeah, fair enough. Go ahead. And this should get me then Skipper's details. So it says Skipper is 5 years old, and you should be able to find Skipper in the Arctic exhibit on the polar path. Not bad, right? So here we go. Now, debugging. Of course, there are some tips that are given out there. You can always quit and come back and launch Gemini CLI too. But in case you find something of this sort, just go back steps, do it slowly. Most likely it's something you missed out, or the environment variable is not set correctly, so on and so forth, right? So what we can actually do is just as instructed, we can do a quit and come out. Just to keep in mind, in case anytime you want to know your Gemini CLI's version, you could just use this command, and this 122, anything from a 1.19 or 20 or higher is needed to see the last part where we'll be using MCP prompts. So what are the next steps? The next step is optional. It's just kind of validating a few things in Google Cloud in case you want to know whether the services were indeed invoked. So this is a G-Cloud run services. Which service? Our Zoo MCP server. And it says, please read the logs and limited to 5 of them. So we can always do that, not bad. But remember, in case you hit some issues, you need to debug this. This may not be the optimal way. You'll have to learn how to figure out, certain things over here. So for example, you could do Cloud Run. I'll just show you. If you go to Cloud Run, our service, you will see, has got deployed over here, the Zoo MCP server. You can see it requires authentication also. It's in that region that we did, who deployed it, and so on. If you go into the details, it's going to obviously show you some of the observability, metrics. You got some logs. So the same ones which you saw coming up, right? You can actually, see out here. In case there are any errors, you can even use that. Even explain this log entry is a nice way by which you get AI assistance for your Google Cloud logs itself. Now coming back to this, so in case you want to see logs, obviously this is one way of doing it. There's also Logs Explorer and many other services in Google Cloud. All right. So going to the last step, which is to add a prompt. Why not? So instead of using or let me step back a bit. As I said, MCP has or exposes 3 things. One is tools, the other thing is prompts, and the last one is resources. At this point in time, the Gemini CLI supports tools and prompts. Now, prompts are a pretty neat way by which you can simply provide some / commands and autofill a few things, and then it sort of ends up exposing a prompt so that then the LLM can execute it. So if you see here, we had done previously MCP tool, but now you can add this additional code for a prompt. And prompt, as you can see, just returns back the prompt which the LLM can then use to give that. So what we'll do is we'll just copy this stuff. We will go back to our editor in server.py. And we've got tools here, but we are going to be just adding this MCP prompt also. Autosave is already in place, so when everything looks fine, all we need to do is go up and do a G-Cloud run deploy again. So either you paste it from the command that's given there, or I have it here. That's the same one that's told you redeploy your application, because we've added another prompt to it, right? So That's what we'll do. Either you copy it, or I think we can just stick to that command which was there. Let's go ahead. So again, a redeployment happens. This can again take close to a minute or more. So be patient on that. It's going on. And you'll see the same set of steps that I had gone through earlier. So what does the steps say? So we've added our code. We are in the process right now of redeploying, refreshing your token. That's a good thing to do. So that just makes sure that, you know, our ID token value in the environment is refreshed. Obviously, then it says launch Gemini. And then I'll show you the prompt is a very neat way of doing things in case you design it well. So instead of actually saying that, you know, where can I find lions, you could literally, you know, have just a slash command that gets automatically added to your list of commands that's out there. So just while this is going on, in case I'm just showing you now, this is the Cloud Run service that we are updating, you know, with a new version. So if I go to that Cloud Run service and revisions, right? So if I go to revisions, it's interesting to see what's going on. The first one we deployed about a few minutes back. But then the second one currently, as you can see, it's going on. Hey, it seems like it's got healthy, 100% traffic has got moved to that. And if we see our, you know, output here, a bit crazy, it's gone over here, but it's done and the service is ready, right? So congratulations. So what's the next step? We're just going to be refreshing our token quickly. And everything looks good. We should be again launching Gemini and in this terminal itself. And a few things to note here, because now we've got two tools and we've got an additional prompt also exposed. So how does it all look? So let's maximize this. We've got a few things going. So let me just clear this whole stuff. You can see that our MCP server is already in place. MCP list, what happens, right? So you can see here now, it's not just got those two tools, but it's also got the find prompt. And how does the find prompt show up, right? That's like important to see. So let me, oops. Okay. So if you do a slash, right, now you'll find that, see that it's also got a find thing next to it with a find exhibit, right? So it's actually picked up the prompt details. So if I just do a find and it prompts even the animal that I need to search for. So if I just, you know, go ahead and do this, and then I can say maybe, you know, lions. And now this is going to hit the prompt. It's going to get the prompt back, and then it's going to be you know, fulfilling your query similarly through the tool execution itself. But see, this is a different way by which you can actually build out this whole thing. So here you go. So it again says, okay, to get this, I'll have to get animals by species, allow the tool execution. I can just say yes. And if everything is fine, it's got the details, and it'll print out that lions can be found over here in our zoo, right? So that that's the example out here. And again, of course, there are a few stretch goals. Think about doing it. You could probably just create a new MCP server if you like, or you know, yeah, as it mentioned over here, some other fun facts. Go and expand this, you know, if you like. And of course, now I've also shown you how to use that from Gemini CLI. So that's a cool way. Again, remember, this MCP server, which you've deployed right now over here, can potentially be used even from other clients if you wish to. So not just Gemini CLI. Sorry. All right. So the next step is nothing much. It's just concluding. Congratulations. We built our thing successfully. In case you want to do a cleanup, there are a few steps that are given over here. But just to summarize, we built out and deployed, you know, an MCP server on Google Cloud Run in a secured fashion. And we also show how to connect to your MCP server from Gemini CLI. Hope you found this useful. If there's any feedback, do let me know about it. Thank you so much.